Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Expert Insights, Rethinking Your Network Operations Toolset as Cisco Prime End of Life Arrives. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be moderating today's event. Our featured speakers are Seamus McGillicuddy, Vice President of Research covering Network Management at EMA, and John Kies, Team Leader of ITOM Cloud Product Marketing at OpenText. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our featured speakers. Seamus, take it away.
Thanks, Raleigh, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Seamus McGillicuddy. I'm the Vice President of Research, as Raleigh said, at EMA. I am an industry analyst who does a lot of research on what IT organizations do with their networks in terms of design, implementation, and ongoing management of them. So I survey thousands and thousands of IT professionals per year. I talk to dozens of them on a monthly basis just to try to understand what their challenges are, what their goals are, and try to translate that into insights that can help IT professionals optimize their approach to network management. And with that, I'd like to invite John to introduce himself as well.
Oh, thank you very much, Seamus. Hey, great to be here. I'm the product marketing lead for our cloud solutions, including Operations Bridge and Network Operations Management. Got a deep background in product management, everything from business to business to consumer, as well as product marketing. But we were really excited to bring some really interesting topic to you today around Cisco Live EOL. So looking forward to the conversation.
Great. And just in terms of logistics, if you have questions, we'll answer them at the end. So just log your questions in the Q&A panel at any time, and we'll get to them at the end. And this event will be recorded. You'll get an email follow-up after this with a link to it, I believe, in the slides, and a white paper download. And a recording of this will be found at enterprisemanagement.com if you want to check it out later. So Cisco Prime. The clock is ticking, is what this slide says. Cisco Prime, if you're here, you probably are familiar with it. If you haven't heard of it, there's no reason why you'd be here right now to listen to us talk. What is it, though? As a refresher for those who want a history lesson or whatever, Cisco Prime Infrastructure is a suite of network management capabilities or products or tools designed for managing Cisco-based campus and branch networks. So it was introduced as the brand in 2011. A lot of it was a reworking of or modernization of the Cisco Works tools, or some, Cisco Works LMS, for instance. It was basically like the next generation of Cisco network management solutions for Cisco networks, right? These were appliance-based tools, typically, not something you could deploy as a service or what have you. Primarily supporting Cisco infrastructure, although they were capable of doing something with non-Cisco products, primarily around like monitoring capabilities, but they're used to manage Cisco routers, especially switches and Wi-Fi access points. And actually, I think a lot of people that are still using Cisco Prime to some extent are really relying on them for Wi-Fi management to a great extent, and secondarily using them for switching and routing management. And one of the key innovative things that Cisco introduced when they first launched Prime infrastructure back in the beginning of the previous decade, was the concept of application-centric workflows, like being able to manage networks from the perspective of, oh, well, this is how the network is delivering applications to users. Let's make sure that we're aware of that as we try to troubleshoot an issue or make a change to a network, thinking about how it's going to impact application experience. But of course, this is something from almost 13 years ago. So, the concept of application-centric workflows probably has changed quite a bit since then or become more sophisticated. So, which is the reason why Cisco has already announced end of life for Cisco Prime and has already stopped selling it. So you can't buy this anymore unless you know someone inside who's willing to help you out. And that means that as the the section slide mentioned at the outset, the clock is ticking on anyone who's using Cisco Prime. Later this year in September, ongoing maintenance of the product will end. So Cisco will stop developing bug fixes, for instance. So if you notice a bug after September 28th of this year, and you call up support and say, hey, can you fix this? They'll be like, sorry, no, you're just gonna have to live with that bug. And then a year from then, security fixes and patches will end. So if you see any sort of any sort of vulnerability that is discovered by white hats or whatever, they're not going to be fixed. So exploits will be happening, and there's not much you can do about it. And then all customer support ends in 2028. And when I talk to people who are still using Prime, they're like, hey, I'm still going to get support until 2028. I'm not in any rush to replace Prime. I'm like, well, did you think about the fact that bugs are going to pile up? Because they'll be exposed if you're suddenly updating iOS on some Catalyst switches, and suddenly there's a bug in how it supports that switch. You're not going to be able to get a fix after this September. And the security thing is even more scary to me. So but yeah, some people still think, well, I'm getting some customer support until 2028. I'm fine. But let's be real. The clock is ticking. So you start to think about, well, what I'm going to do, because I'm using Prime for a lot of my network management processes. What do I need to replace? Well, this is what Cisco Prime can do. It's got network discovery capabilities where it can go out and discover all Cisco switching, routing, Wi-Fi on your network, and collect inventory device info on that, like make a model number, everything, so that you can have a good source of truth for inventory of Cisco equipment. It collects the config information on that stuff, so you can start to have some golden config capabilities. It's going to discover and map topologies and dependencies across the network. That's where the sort of the application-centric workflows come in. And then it's got some automated provisioning capabilities, where you can design your network configs and services, maybe adapt what's been discovered. And then you can also auto provision devices when they connect. So you plug something in, it'll it basically starts to introduce some zero-touch provisioning in there. And then it's got, on the day two operations side of things, you've got network monitoring. So it can collect, report, analyze on network telemetry based on SNMP, MIBs and traps, device metrics, and flows, specifically net flow in this case, so that you can sort of use those to do fault management, for instance. It'll alert on events and thresholds that it detects in unusual flows or device metrics or events that come through traps. It'll classify alerts by severity, and then it has a workflow for acknowledging, assigning, and clearing those alerts. So basic fault management capabilities. And then it's got config management, so you can do, you can write new configs, you can review and commit changes, you can have someone else review and commit the changes. And it's got some compliance management capabilities in there. So you can set your golden configs, you can audit actual configs, you can remediate standards violations. So all of this very powerful for Cisco-based networks when it came out in 2011. And so what are you supposed to do? Oh, I believe, oh yeah, on this. So what are you supposed to do? Hold on. I think I forgot, but on this, we're supposed to do it. I'm going to hand it back over to Raleigh for a quick, poll on this.
Great.
Raleigh, you want to take it over?
Yeah, thank you, Seamus. Yes, this is the first of two poll questions. The question is, what direction are you taking to replace Cisco Prime infrastructure? Your options are leaning toward Cisco DNA Center, leaning toward third-party tools, or undecided. I will leave that open for 10 or 15 seconds. Seamus, I don't know if you want to move on while we get the results, and then I will share them.
Okay, thank you. All right, so sorry for backing up there. So as you're taking that poll number, oh, and the results are in. There we go. So we've got wow, okay, so 67% of the people on this webinar are undecided about what direction they're going in. We've got 8% that are leaning towards third-party tools, and then 25% that are leaning towards DNA Center. That is interesting. So I guess it makes sense that most of the people on this webinar are undecided. That's why they come here, to get some advice, huh? Well, good. All right. So now we mentioned DNA Center in that poll question. What is DNA Center? Cisco is recommending that you migrate to this as your replacement for Cisco Prime. DNA Center's been around for a few years. It's a hybrid on-premises and cloud-based network management platform. So when it first came to market, it was I believe 100% an on-prem solution, and they've since hybridized it and started offering the ability to consume it as a cloud-based solution. It is like its predecessor, primarily for managing a Cisco network. Also, I haven't really heard many people taking this in and using it, but Cisco did rebrand it recently as Cisco Catalyst Center. It's been embracing the Catalyst brand for a lot of things, including renaming its Viptela-based SD-WAN solution as Catalyst SD-WAN. So it's renamed DNA Center as Cisco Catalyst Center. So if you go to buy it, use that term when you're Googling or running a search, you'll have better luck. If you choose to buy it. General feature parity with Cisco Prime, just more modern, with some newer capabilities. One of the complaints that you hear about Cisco Prime is, well, it doesn't really manage my SD-WAN stuff at all. That was an issue that people still on Prime were dealing with whenever I talk to them. So, with DNA Center or Catalyst Center, it does have some extensibility to that. Like, you can get into your SD-WAN controller from it. For instance, your Cisco SD-WAN controller. It's a more modern interface. That's like another thing you're going to really notice if you're looking at it. It does have multiple subscription tiers. So like the Essentials tier is primarily for network element management. Specifically, if you go back to the previous slide, like the network discovery stuff, the provisioning, the config management, maybe a little bit of the compliance management. And then with Advantage, that you go, you pay a little more or a lot more. I haven't looked at what the prices are, to be honest with you. That gives you more policy-based automation, so more compliance capabilities, for instance, and then monitoring and analytics, and then some AI ops type features, and everyone's doing something with AI and machine learning to enhance network management these days. So they've got that in there, and then on the licensing front, they also have these expansion packs where they'll do add-on integrations with other Cisco management capabilities, like Identity Services Engine, their Thousand Eyes synthetic monitoring tool, etc. So that's what Cisco is recommending. And with that, I'm going to give you another poll question opportunity by handing it over to Raleigh for our second poll question, if you want to take it away.
Great. Thank you, Seamus. The second question is, what is your primary concern around Cisco DNA Center? It's difficult to use, doesn't provide traditional network monitoring, lack of multi-vendor support, cost, or none of the above. And Seamus, like last time, we'll just leave it open for a few more seconds and the results will come in pretty quickly. So it looks like some results are still coming in. Okay.
I'll just wait.
All right. You should see the results now.
Okay, so you've got 11% that say none of the above, no concerns. We've got 11% saying it's difficult to use, 44% saying they've got some concerns around multi-vendor support. So that's the big one here. And then cost. So cost and multi-vendor support seem to be what people are worried about here. Good to know. So before you decide the path you're going to take, if you're facing Cisco Prime infrastructure end of life, you need to take a step back and think about what's the state of network operations in my company. What what does the tool set look like? Like when I adopt my replacement, like how's it going to fit into what I'm doing? How can I improve what I'm doing? If I choose the wrong path, how is it going to make things worse? And one thing that I've been concerned about, in the like just in my ongoing research, every 2 years, I ask in a big survey of like several hundred, like usually it's between 300 and 400 network management types. I ask them, how would you rate the success of your network operations organization over the past year? And you see here, I've asked that in 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022. I will be asking this question again later this year. And you see something's happening. Like things are holding steady, and then suddenly in 2020 it dipped. And incidentally, that 2020 survey was done before COVID took off. So it does not represent COVID bringing things down necessarily. But then in 2022, it continued this downward spiral. You see from nearly half of NetOps teams being completely successful, to less than, or a little more than 1 in 4 feeling completely successful in 2022. So that's concerning, and it shows that there's something. Well, there's many things causing this. And I've done a lot of research into all of it. Like, what are the things that are causing this? There's a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, there's a lot of disruption, first of all. Like, you're probably dealing with a lot of cloud adoption that's making things hard for you to manage things. SD-WAN has added a little bit of complexity that you didn't expect to see coming down the pike, things like that. But also, when we ask people, what are your top challenges with NetOps these days? These are the things that really like rose to the top of the list. Like 1 in 5 people were saying that these 4 things were significantly sources of pain. Tool sprawl, like we've got a lot of tools, like typical organization has anywhere from 4 to 15 tools. Like I've talked to people that have like 20 or 50 for monitoring, troubleshooting, and managing their networks. That's a lot of fragmentation. Data quality issues, like I got a tool that has a lot of errors in data collection. Like I have lots of gaps. I can't trust that this is actually good data. I have a lack of end-to-end visibility across my network. Like I have one tool here, one tool there. I mean, you think about like, for instance, Cisco Prime primarily, no pun intended, was used to manage your campus and branch networks. But then like when it came to like the cloud infrastructure your organization is using, data center networks you have, and incidentally, your SD-WAN environment, you had to use something else, right? So no end-to-end network visibility, big issue for NetOps teams. And then lack of change management controls, huge cause of pain. Always comes up. Like I don't have, first of all, some people are like, I don't even have standards to put change control around because I can't standardize my network. It's so messed up. But then like I don't have any controls to prevent bad changes from happening too. So think about how you can address that before you start making a decision about your next tool to replace Prime. You got to think about how can you tackle these issues. So now is the time to rethink your entire network operations tool set. And like if you're going to replace something that's so integral to your tool set for network management, you should think about it more. You should think about it just as like, okay, I'm going to swap something in for this. Like, what can I do to transform everything? So contextualize this transition with your entire tool set and think about how will it impact processes and workflows. For instance, when I talk to tool engineers, people who work at very large companies and their job is like buying and implementing tools, they tell me that if you just install and then hand it over to operations, it's useless. Like you have to like also thought how a tool is going to fit into the way they work. You got to think about what processes and workflows your people are using to manage and troubleshoot and your network, and think about how your tools can fit into those processes. So that's like something you need to sort of analyze. Probably it will involve conversations with operations. Maybe you are in operations, so you maybe have a conversation with yourself or your team. You're just like, hey, how do we want to work? Like, if there's something we could do differently, what would it be? And how can tools get us there? And this kind of came up on the poll question. You also got to think about multi-vendor management requirements. Most of the people that are still using Prime, when I talk to them, like, they're not a pure 100% Cisco shop, even though they're using Cisco management tools. They've got a Palo Alto firewall. They might have like a Riverbed or a Silver Peak optimization that's still in there, even though they've adopted SD-WAN. They might have a third-party Wi-Fi. They might have Cisco switching, but they might have third-party Wi-Fi. Although using Prime for Azure, probably don't do that. And then, yeah, SD-WAN. There are like 20, 30 SD-WAN vendors out there still. A lot of consolidations happen, so there's maybe less than that. But the chances are, like, you might be like using a lot of Cisco switching and Wi-Fi, but you still might be using a third-party SD-WAN solution, and going to integrate management of that into your branch office networking management. So multi-vendor is a huge source of pain when it comes to network management. Third-party tools exist because, third-party network management tools are like one of the reasons for existing is to address that pain point, and just being able to work with any vendor that comes along. And then you also need to think about network data. We noted in the previous slide that that data quality is a huge source of pain, but it's also the data is often siloed. You might have, if you're collecting network data for your Cisco network, for instance, let's say you got all your Cisco configs and Prime, but that's not your 100% source of truth on config, because you're going to have, firewall config information and rules for firewalls somewhere else. You might have configs for like Juniper routers somewhere else. Like, it'd be better if you could have all config information in one place, in my opinion. So you don't want that siloed. We've already talked about the quality issue. You need to really, if you're struggling with quality around collection of telemetry for monitoring and troubleshooting, like, you need to make sure that the next tool you adopt does not have that issue. Retention, people tell me, and my research data bears this out, that the volume of data and the variety and diversity of data that they're collecting from their network is increasing. And then integrations, thinking about like how you can pull data from elsewhere or push data elsewhere. Like, almost everyone I talk to is integrating some of their network management tool sets with IT service management, for instance. Because of ticketing, you want to be able to, for instance, if you got an alert that's going to create a you got an alert that's going to create a ticket in ServiceNow so that your operations team can respond. And wouldn't it be great if you had good integration with ServiceNow that like injected a lot of context into that ticket from your system, so that when the person opens a ticket, they know how to act much more quickly, and like who to escalate to and things like that. So integrations around data can also be really important. And so, yeah, tool sprawl. I've already mentioned this, but the typical IT team uses 4 to 15 tools for network management. And in our research, we see correlations between larger tool sets and higher percentages of downtime caused by manual errors, like a bad config change. We have all these tools that you're swiveling back and forth between to manage things like compliance, change management, things like that. Oh God, I got to go here for the config file, and then I go here to implement the config. Errors happen and downtime occurs. These are some quotes from people I talked to about this issue, an IT operations manager with perhaps, I would say, like the biggest government agency in the world, or at least North America. We're close to 20 tools from 6 to 8 vendors. Some of those tools don't have a lot of people using them because they're specialized for a specific vendor. Like, oh, this is my firewall vendor's management tool. This is my routing vendor's management tool. I got this tool because it's, you know, part of my SD-WAN stack. I got Prime. You know, I got Prime for this, and then I got, oh, what I got in my data center? I got 3 vendors in my data center. This is my load balancing vendor, my firewall vendor, my switching vendor, and all of them have different tools. And then this network engineer at a Fortune 500 manufacturer, like he's talking about how hard it is to consolidate. We would like to have as few tools as possible. If one tool could do all the jobs that our current set of 12 tools does, it would be easier in terms of integration and maintenance, but no tool can do everything we need, he says. Multi-vendor support impacts most network teams, I find. Like, you might be a Cisco shop, but most Cisco shops I talk to have got more than at least a second or third vendor in there. Here's a government contractor, a network engineer to government contractor telling me, we're looking for a config management tool that is multi-vendor. We have Palo Alto networks and Riverbed WAN optimization, and a third-party support of config management in Prime is not done well. So obviously, as I was talking to him about this, like he's looking at DNA Center, but he knows that third-party support is something that he needs to address, and that could influence his decision. Like he's still working on it. Like he's leaning towards DNA Center, but he knows that he needs third-party support. So he's like, oh, if something else comes along, I'm gonna listen. And not all tools are created the same. I did some research we've surveyed hundreds of people about just their network monitoring and troubleshooting tools. And I asked them, what are your challenges with this tool? And the top response, 26%, was the scope is too narrow. So in the case of Prime, Prime doesn't look at, like, if let's say you still have you got like a Cisco network in your data center. It's all Nexus switches. Prime doesn't manage Nexus. So you got to go to a second tool. Alarm noise. 21% of people tell me that their tools are just that their biggest source of pain is that their tools are just too noisy. And incidentally, 53% of the mean response to how many of the alerts coming out of your tools are false alarms was 53%. More than half of the alerts coming out of my tools are not actionable. 21% said, I'm just not getting insights out of the tools. Like I look at it, right? And I see data, and like in my head, I can get the insights by sifting through the data. But it'd be nice if the tools were able to present dashboards and reports. It actually kind of made those insights just sort of pop, so that a person with fewer skills and less knowledge than I have would be able to do something instead of just escalating it to me because I'm really busy. And then poor data quality kind of came up earlier. Our tools just are not doing a very good job of collecting and retaining data. Incidentally, on the right-hand side, you see data quality issues. The biggest things that people are struggling with, conflicts of data between tools. So I got one tool that's collecting data here, another tool is collecting data there. It's different types of data, but it's collected at intervals that make it hard for me to cross-correlate. Like, oh, okay, so this tool collected data at 12:01 p.m. and this one didn't look at the same thing until 12:05 p.m. So how do I know these things are looking at the same reality? 45% said collection problems. Data is just getting dropped, errors. Data storage limits run into that problem. Like if you're using an on-prem tool, all the data is retained on that appliance. You're going to run into that issue. And then 36% told us that siloed data within a tool. Like I can't, my tool collects flows, it collects SNMP data, it collects logs, it collects config and notes config change, but can I correlate that in a meaningful way in a dashboard? Not all tools can do that. So what should you be looking for in your Prime replacement? Well, you want a unified network management platform, something that does more than one thing. We already mentioned that tool fragmentation is an issue. I'm using 4 tools. I'm using 50 tools. I'm using 20 tools. Network teams need to adopt a unified multifunction network management platform. Those people that tell me that that is their procurement priority with their tool sets are also reporting more success with network operations. So we already noted earlier that only 27% of people in my most recent survey are feeling that their network operations groups are doing well. They were more likely to say that their network operations are doing well if they also told me that this is their priority, a multifunction network platform that can consolidate your tool set. And why? Because it can correlate insights across things like metrics, flows, config changes. So you can say, oh, look at this. I'm looking at this time series graph, and right when this, this issue with traffic flows, like, told me that I'm having a major application performance issue, right around that same time, someone made this change to this switch. I wonder if those are related. They can integrate workflows and processes across features and functionality so that you can sort of do things like, validate a change before you commit it by looking at, how it fits with like your compliance standards and stuff. And also being able to, quickly spot whether or not a change was good or bad by sort of comparing it to performance and fault data. And it can also improve collaboration within and across groups. So like you can, if the tools, if you have everything in one place on one dashboard, it's easier to share that with other people on your team or send a report to someone in another group that needs to know about something and act on it. Like, you don't want to say, okay, well, here's this report here from this tool, and here's this report there from that tool, and let me write you this email that tells you like how these 2 reports come together to provide insight. Wouldn't it be better to just send them one report? You see this network engineer at a government contractor who says it's not easy to find something like this. We would prefer to use just one tool and deal with just one vendor, but I don't see that happening. We can't find a company that can do that kind of consolidation for us. I would argue that he's just not looking hard enough, but another thing to look for in your prime replacement is some kind of data lake capability. Like, so 87% of network teams in my research say that the volume and variety of the data that they're collecting is growing, right? So it's going up, and as it goes up, the retention capabilities of their tools are being challenged, right? And their ability to like to correlate across data is being challenged as well because the data is becoming more complex. 83% network teams would like to stream data from their monitoring and management tools to a network data lake. That my research has shown that interest as well. Now, network management tools that have a modern data lake architecture, they can scale capacity, they can scale retention, and they can collect and store diverse classes of data. When we asked people why they're interested in a data lake for network data, 58% said, I think it's going to improve the way that we collaborate as a team or as across silos. It's also going to improve our data retention. So majority of them said those are the 2 big ones. And then nearly half said, this is going to help us correlate data across tool silos. If I can send data from multiple tools into a data lake, then that data lake can organize that data, normalize it, and then I can run reports on the data in the data lake in a tool that supports that data lake or is powered by that data lake. And then 43% said, I think this is going to help us audit things like compliance and SLAs and stuff like that. So also, perhaps most important, when you're looking to your Cisco Prime replacement, whatever you decide to do, these are the things that your peers are thinking about. In terms of platform requirements, they're really focused on whether that tool can integrate effectively with other IT operations management systems, like ServiceNow, maybe, or security monitoring, like a XDR platform or a SIM. Maybe DevOps orchestration tools. You want to be able to integrate your config and compliance management with that, so that you can sort of coordinate how you manage your network with what DevOps is doing with applications. It's also very important to think about ease of use, because people often tell me they're struggling to hire skilled network engineers, so they really need their admins and analysts to do more than they have in the past, and that means that the tools need to be easier to use so that they are empowered. Low maintenance and support costs are really important to people. You might purchase a license to a tool, and then you find that you're paying a lot on the maintenance and support cost side. So looking at that, keeping that in mind, and then rapid ROI. We want to be able to see a return on our investment relatively quickly. And so you need to be thinking about that and how your tool is going to optimize your processes. And that's really going to be important for selling management on picking the right tool. Like, if you're going to go with a vendor you haven't worked with before, you really need to be prepared to analyze ROI. And that vendor probably work with you on that. And then in terms of feature requirements, people really prioritize data visualization, being able to visualize data in new and innovative ways on different types of charts and graphs, so that the insights really start to pop from the data and you can take action. Traffic analysis is very important to them. So not just about metrics and managing false, but actually seeing where traffic's going and seeing trends and identifying anomalies in traffic. Change detection and validation, very important. And then alert management, so that you have less noise. Maybe you got a tool that is really good at taking like 20 alerts and correlating that into one event, so you can just focus on what the root cause of that large event that's kicking off all these alerts is, and you don't have to tick through alert after alert and say, oh, this one's related to this other one. And then network discovery and dependency mapping is very important. And then just being able to search data, like, oh, I'm going to search for this data and see, like, oh, let's see everything that's related to this alert. Let's see everything that's related to this data point, and like generate some kind of report or dashboard on the fly that help me just analyze what's happening here. Searchability is very important. And being able to drill down and search deeper for data behind an alert, for instance. So final thoughts. Cisco Prime is history. It's you can no longer buy it, and support is gradually disappearing, and Cisco is urging you to move to their next product. So now is the time to rethink network management. You should really let the need for tool consolidation and vendor support guide you here. Like, you need to think about how you can improve operational efficiency, reduce complexity in tools, and consolidate to deal with the fact that you probably are in a swivel chair looking at 5 or 6 screens, and because you have multiple vendors, but also because you have siloed tools that are really good at one thing. You need to look for a multi-function platform that sort of unifies workflows across those different functions. And you should think about the opportunity of establishing a network data lake with a tool vendor that offers a modern data lake architecture, instead of just like an old relational database that that they've been using for like 10 or 15 years. And know the requirements of your people. Talk to your people about how they work, and think about how you can improve that. And think about how the tool that you're going to buy is going to fit into the way they work, or can improve the way they work. So those are my thoughts on the matter. Now I'm going to turn it over to John, he's going to take you through a couple other things.
Great. Thank you so much, Seamus. Really appreciate it. So It's really fun because when we look at this research that you did and all the thoughts that you put together from both, the new research that you did, as well as your existing research pieces like network megatrends and some of the other pieces there, we really see an alignment between what OpenText offers and the core challenges that network teams face. So let's talk a little bit about meeting the challenge of Cisco Prime EOL. We understand every time something like this goes end of life, it's a very big challenge. With me today is my esteemed peer and principal product manager for network operations management that's focused on the automation side is John Jackson. Say hello, John.
Thank you, Mr. Kias. Glad to be here. And Seamus, great presentation. Lots of bullet points. We'll hope to kind of key in on some of those and tie it back to what we can provide.
Great. So, Rethink is a really great way to think about network management. I think everyone thought like network management maybe was going to go away because everything was going to the cloud. But the reality is our networks are more important than ever before, and they're more diverse than ever before. And so we have to really take the opportunity to evolve. And something like Cisco Prime end of life can be that flashpoint that drives a rethinking of your network management solution. And then how we can meet some of those key capabilities, especially some of those ones that Seamus spoke to. Hey, John, before we get started here, do we have any experience with Cisco's tools?
Absolutely. So back in the day, going back in our history, at one point, Cisco OEM'd our products and called it Cisco NCM for the network configuration management piece. And that's our current product that we sell today called network automation.
That's right. And that's a really interesting piece there of history, how they looked at our tool, found it so valuable that they OEM'd it for years and years before trying to replicate it with Cisco Prime.
Yeah, and we still have a fantastic relationship from the R&D side with Cisco because of that. We had the first, as device drivers were created, they were created for Cisco first. So
yeah,
we had a great relationship and benefits on both sides of the fence.
Good stuff. All right, so when we talk about rethinking your network management, I'll just leave these slides up for you and really think about the future of your network management and whether or not you're in a position to address the changing demands of your organization. So this is a great opportunity. If you have to move away from Cisco Prime, now's the time to rethink. And I want to point out, and this is something that Seamus mentioned, that an incomplete tool set can be a problem. And when you looked at the overall satisfaction with network management, it was not good. It's declining. And a lot of that is really related to these incomplete tool sets where you have multiple tools that you're trying to manage the network with, and no single source of truth, no ability to maintain compliance management. All of these things impact your ability to effectively manage your networks, and we want to be able to change that with you.
And John, one of the key things that Seamus mentioned were gaps. So for example, if you have an all Cisco monitoring tool, but yet there's things that Cisco don't provide, for example, like a load balancer, and you go with an F5, well, guess what? You're going to have a gap in monitoring those other vendor solutions as a result.
And those gaps, I think, are very much reflected in those overall quality results that Seamus has seen. So, yep. So here we are with network operations management. Give you a quick overview. It's really all about full visibility and management. And one of the things that we use and describe to help our customers is this concept of leave no network behind, meaning whether it's a subsidiary or a segment, it's SDN, whatever it is, we want to be able to manage that so you have a single place you can go to, a single source of truth, and really be able to ensure that your network is running well from end to end. And then the other piece is, and I'll say that Cisco Prime, started down this path, which is integration of configuration management and automated compliance. Cisco Prime took that step, but really was only focused on Cisco devices. We certainly look at that from a holistic, all networks are and devices are equal, and really have a broad set of capabilities designed to pick up all the network devices that are out there and that organizations
and
are
John,
using.
I would even hazard to say that's one of the key feathers in our cap from OpenText is our multi-vendor support. I would dare to say that we are unmatched from the number of vendors and the number of devices under each vendor that we support out there.
That's right. And then wrapping that all up with our data lake. And Seamus said, hey, you need a network data lake. And I'll go a step farther, and I will say that you need an operations database or an operations data lake. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So everything that you would expect to have from monitoring capabilities, like John said, focused on the multi-vendor environments. We've got continuing to enhance our SDN coverage, including Cisco ACI. One of the things that we do really well is we have a high scalability, so you're able to not have lots of compute running lots of instances. We support up to 80,000 devices. And then flexible consumption. We know organizations may want SaaS, they may want perpetual license, the typical licensing, or they may want subscription. And we let you decide how you want to do that, whether, what works for your organization.
And you don't have to get a certification in how to license your product. So that's the key thing.
Yeah, I think we got a slide on that later too.
Yeah.
We have what we call the Optic Data Lake, and it's really a acceleration of our tool set. One of the things that's really unique about it is that it's based on Vertica. Vertica is a modern columnar database that is really well designed to handle the vast amount of data that is coming in. It's used by some of the largest companies around the world. If you've ever been a victim of surge pricing, that's built on a Vertica database. But the whole key here is that you want a flexible database that you can not only bring in network data, but you could actually use operations data and bring all your third-party data in and have that normalized and time sequence so that you can do really effective reporting very, very easily. So that's something that we share with Operations Bridge, and Operations Bridge certainly has all the integrations you need to bring in third-party data. So imagine having that data lake across your organization. And John, talk to us a little bit about this side of it, the automation and orchestration capabilities.
Yeah, the thing that's really neat about us, and Seamus kind of mentioned this too, is you want a tool that does more than one thing, and we do that. And when you look at the term network management, what does management mean? And that means not only are you discovering and monitoring your environment, but you're also doing something to it in case something needs to be done. So if you need to, if you monitor a device and it has a problem, you need to fix that problem or remediate. And we provide a full ability to do that remediation, to do proactive configuration changes. You can link that into going back to another thing that Seamus talked about, change control. You can link that for change control and approvals. You can have it linked into your service desk so that you don't have unauthorized ad hoc changes, or if there are, they can be tracked. So when those occurred, And the biggest thing is when you do have a change, your big goal is to reduce your, what do they call it, the blast radius. And if there is a blast radius that does get out of control, you can at least audit why that happened and tie it back to a change. So yes, we provide you that ability, but we also provide you the ability to limit that blast radius and do the audit to make sure, what changed, when did it change, and why did it change if it was not authorized.
And one of the other things that we'll talk about here is monitoring for change, right? Folks monitor for performance all the time, but do they monitor for change? And it is essential to be able to do that and understand why things are changing in your network. And I was going to let John talk to this, but I just want to point this out real quickly.
Yeah.
Configuration. Yeah, let me just finish here. Configuration and change management issues, 61% of outages are related to that. So that's essential and something that we build into our product to ensure that organizations understand when change occurs and what the impact is. John, talk to us about this capability to tie in DevOps tools.
Yeah, and again, this kind of ties back to what Seamus was talking about with regards to bringing in DevOps processes into the network, and that sounds like a foreign concept, but it really plays into the role of the network. In traditional DevOps, you're talking about servers and applications and all of that process. When you're talking about building an app, coding an application, well, in a network, those applications you're building are actually configurations. And as a result of setting up these configurations and changing them, you may be creating scripts and playbooks, which requires that ability to not only, use those scripts, but also track them. So version control becomes a very important component, and being able to have a method to collaborate with other teams, because a lot of times you'll be working with cross-domain teams from the firewall team or the routing team or the wireless team. They may have their own scripts, and you want to be able to bring those into your platform in a really easy, seamless manner. So that's what we're doing now is we're embracing net DevOps. And yes, that is a true industry term. We didn't make this up, but we're allowing you to play in that net DevOps space where you're treating, configuration as code and making that seamless integration to be able to do that and, have all the benefits of it, version control, and collaboration.
Yeah, and then combine it with all the tools that we use, such as pre and post checks, to make sure that things happen the correct way. So working with the tools that the automation gurus are using, as well as the built-in tools to network management.
And John, that's another key term is assurance, network assurance, change assurance. Those pre-checks and post-checks are absolutely critical to make sure that, hey, when I made this change, is this application still working? Is the network still good? And those are easy things to do, but oftentimes those are the most neglected tests that people should be doing, but they're not.
Great. So here was the kind of the elements that Cisco Prime capabilities have directly from Seamus. I just want to point out, the top row is all the stuff that you expect, including fault management on the left there, but that configuration management and compliance management is the real key. And most vendors, very few vendors actually include that, or it's poorly integrated with network operations management. We cover all of the boxes that you need, but in a multi-vendor environment. So you're not worrying about whether or not you're actually getting covered.
Well, John, I wanted to steal something from you. You actually came up with a term called 3D compliance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good one because most vendors only do one dimension of compliance. They're just looking at the config. But,
right.
One of the things that we do that's unique is we take multiple aspects of compliance, not only config, but we also add on the OS versioning from the software standpoint, and then doing diagnostics, looking at the actual state of the network. So all of those things can be a factor that says this device or this network change is not in compliance.
All right. You know what? When I look at this licensing, John, it looks
Yeah.
pretty confusing to me. And it looks like they're heading more towards just focusing on Cisco devices.
Well, and the funny thing is, this is not the complete list. So Cisco does a great job making lots of products. And this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. You know, this is what and this is from Cisco's website as is, of what's available in their new Catalyst Center, used to be known as DNA Center, of what they make available. Now, there's also additional modules that are not listed here, such as Cisco NSO, Cisco Thousand Eyes, and probably 10 others that you can bolt onto there. But that, you know, that adds to the confusion and adds to the expense, you know, from what you're seeing here.
Yeah, and I think I read a comment where someone said, well, like you mentioned, you have to be certified to understand how to use the licensing. So that's the kind of confusion that we want to be able to avoid. And when we talk about you know, customer successes, certainly we have them, you know, and some of those issues that Seamus mentioned, like too many events are showing up or false alerts, and we can reduce up to 90%. We did that with Accenture. So these are the kind of things that customers are experiencing with network operations management, and it's really across the board in terms of the research that Seamus has done as to what's impacting enterprise network management. So kind of just going ahead and wrapping it up. Your opportunity here is to build a roadmap to your future with network operations management and with all the core capabilities that we have in there. Going to wrap it up here. If there's time, we've got 2 minutes left. You know, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll get back to you specifically. But I wanted to point out something that's real important for you, is that Seamus also developed a white paper. And as you're, you know, making plans for what you're going to do after Cisco Prime is no longer in your organization, I think that white paper is going to be a great asset for you. So we'll provide that in our follow-up email, but look for that as well, or you can copy that bit.ly URL. So with 1 minute to go, I want to say thank you on behalf of all of us here at OpenText, and especially for Seamus for the research that he's done on this very important topic. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, everyone. That will conclude our event. As John mentioned, you will be receiving a follow-up email, and I will be sure to include the link to access this new white paper. And you will also have access to this on-demand webinar. So I hope you'll check these resources out, and I hope we'll see you at a future EMA Research webinar. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.